before we went live to air, I sent a text to Setterfield, McCluggage and Andy McConnell. I just said, boys, good luck. So they had no idea who we were picking. And look, it was a complete and utter surprise to him and to Mike and Sandy, his parents, because they had no idea.
Hi everyone, my name's Julian Trantino and I'm from the Dons Digital team. While we wait for footy to return, we're pleased to bring you a 5-part series with Adrian Dodoro, the club's GM of Liston Recruiting. Leading the club's recruiting for 22 years, Adrian has a wealth of draft stories that he'll be sharing exclusively on the podcast. We hope you enjoy it. Well, Adrian, 2016 was the first year that Essendon had a number one selection. But before we touch on that, just the year in general and the lead up to that draft was Woosh's first year at the club. The club had finished on the bottom of the ladder. It was a year like no other, but there were so many positives. Can you talk about those positives?
Yeah, it goes down as probably one of my most enjoyable years in football. And given what we'd been through as a club the previous few years with the suspensions and what have you, and the doom and gloom around the club, I think one thing that John Worsfold will always be recognised for and thanked by every Essendon person was for his contribution in that year. He came in and just made everyone feel valued that was there and lifted our spirits and made it such an enjoyable year. Now, you can say, yeah, but you finished on the bottom of the ladder. But it certainly didn't feel like that. Each week was a celebration of our club. Losing was difficult, but there was always something out of every game that we got out of that. And knowing that we had a number of boys suspended, they're probably overseas and they were probably watching via the internet. I think we made a lot of people proud in that particular year, and a lot of credit had to go to Woosha for what he did that year. And if you remember correctly, we beat Melbourne in round 2 when everyone said that we wouldn't win a game of football. And if you go back and watch the video of that game to see Parrish and to see Zach Merritt and Joey Danaher and Tipper and all these boys that probably accelerated their careers. And then towards the end of the year, we won, I think, 2 of the last 3 games of that season, and the feeling that the boys just wanted to keep playing. Now, normally when a team finishes on the bottom of the ladder, they want the season to end. They want it to, let's get this over and done with. But our boys were just embracing every minute, loved every minute of it, and that had a lot to do with what Woosha and his coaching staff had created around the club that year. And I think we ended up beating Carlton that last game, and that was a fabulous way to end the year. But, from a terrible set of circumstances, it ended up being quite an enjoyable year and one that we got a lot out of to set us up going forward.
Yeah, it was a real turning point indeed. And then you headed into that draft with pick 1, uncharted waters for you, for the club. You never had that before. How did it feel going into that draft?
It was certainly a strange feeling, and hopefully one that we... And look, it's great to be in the position where you can pick the best player, or hopefully the number one player in a draft. Hopefully it never happens ever again, unless we trade for a number one pick. But it was certainly different. There's no doubt that the spotlight centres around your football club, and there's no doubt we wanted to milk it for everything that it was worth, because we needed to put our club in a positive light. We needed to shine some positivity to our fans out there, and obviously we ended up taking Andy with our first pick, and he's been won the Rising Star in his first year at the club. You can't ask for much more than that, and he's developing into a great midfielder for us as we speak. And he's going to be a terrific player for a long time to come.
Well, speaking of spotlight, you really kept the media guessing in that year. It wasn't a clear-cut number one selection. There was McCluggage was in the conversation, Tim Taranto, Setterfield, McGrath. I believe you didn't even tell McGrath before the draft had started that you were going to take him. Was that the case?
Yeah, no, 100% right. One thing that we wanted to do as a club is, stay true to our own values, but normally who the number one pick's going to be going in, and then there's a cascade of everyone knowing what the selections are. We thought, no, we're not going to do that. But if truth be known, Andy was probably the number one pick from a long way out. Hugh McCluggage certainly was a player that made us think long and hard, and you couldn't have gone wrong taking either one of those boys. We liked Will Setterfield at the time, and people forget that Will's had a knee injury, a pretty severe knee injury since then. We haven't seen the best of him, but he's certainly a good player. And then you had Tim Taranto, who ended up being a very good player as well. So there were some really good players to pick from. But for us, Andy stood out, and he stood out for a number of reasons. We did our homework, and once we met him and his family and knew what he could offer our club, then the decision was difficult, but a decision that we're very, very happy that we've made.
Do you know how Andy felt leading into that? I mean, with the uncertainty, you could either be staying in Melbourne at pick 1, or you could be off to Brisbane with pick 2. Do you know how he went through that period?
Well, I remember post-draft, we had Xavier Campbell organised a room at the SCG where we celebrated the club's first ever number 1 draft pick, and we had one of our sponsors provide a bottle of Grange, which was fantastic. But I looked at Andy and he was absolutely stuffed. He was wiped out. The emotion of the day had got to him, and he just said, "I'm stuffed. I'm emotionally shot," because he had no idea. And what I did, probably just before we went live to air, I sent a text to Setterfield, McCluggage, and Andy McConnell. I just said, "Boys, good luck. Don't know how this is going to go, but you'll find out in about 10 minutes." So they had no idea who we were picking, and I think it was good for them, for everyone, and for the integrity of the draft as well. But and then we called Andy out, and it was a complete and utter surprise to him and to Mike and Sandy, his parents, because they had no idea. I think it's something that we did really well, and I think it added to a very, very special moment for his life and his career.
Well, you were faced with a tough decision with so much talent there at pick 1, but what was it that sort of, I guess, cemented in your minds that Andy McGrath was the man for pick 1?
Yeah, look, Andy brings a bit of everything. He brings a bit of everything to your football club. Firstly, the person, the quality. When we went out to Brighton Grammar and spoke to his teachers, Rob Shaw actually, in his role out there as, I think he's director of football or whatever it was. Sorry, Shawry, I forgot what your title was. Everyone, they couldn't speak highly enough. Like, he was the captain of the school, the captain of the footy team. He had more accolades and on his blazer than a World War II veteran. Like, I couldn't believe it. I think he was in the choir, he was the school captain, he was the athletics captain. It was just amazing. And he was a leader of the school, and it stood out quite evident. And then his football talent, well, for a kid that, family originated from Canada, to come out here and take up the sport is a great story. And the game that stood out for me was the game where he played on Ben Ainsworth. It was Vic Metro versus Vic Country, and he played, and Ainsworth was an absolute gun for Country, and he went and played on him, and he played a defensive game, and he did a great job on him, but his offensive work was outstanding, and that was really special. And then a few weeks later, we and a lot of other clubs obviously would have got in contact with Ryan O'Connor at Sandy Dragons, and we said, "Can you put this kid in the midfield and see what he's got?" And they had an abundance of talent, obviously, with Setterfield and Taranto running around, and Florent as well. So they had a lot of players that could go through their midfield. But once they put Andy in there, you could just see that he had midfield craft, and he had the ability to change angles really easily, great agility, great speed. And a player that we thought, well, you know what, he potentially one day could captain our football club. So why not make the decision to take him, and we did.
Well, it's a big compliment, and like you mentioned, we saw him move into the midfield there in his last year with Sandringham Dragons, and absolutely tore it up after pretty good form at halfback as well before that. But was the plan all along to see him thrive in midfield? Because we are starting to see that now that he's moved there and he's really having a big influence.
Yeah, look, and that was one of the key decisions to draft him. If we thought he was just going to be a halfback, we would have probably taken Hugh McCluggage. But we felt that he had the game to become an elite midfielder. And we hold that view. And if you see his game last year in the final against West Coast, where he stood up on the big stage in a very hostile environment, we lost the game, got beaten fairly resounding in the end. But you walk out and you say, at least McGrath's going to be a bloody good player for the football club going forward. And his pre-season form this year has been outstanding as a midfielder. He adds a defensive element to our midfield, but he also can attack. So Andy's got the ability to play a number of different roles as a mid. He can play as an outside mid and he can play as an inside mid. He can run with an opposition player, but he can also offer you attacking transition running. So there's a number of components to his game that we think will stack up long term to be an elite player at a very, very high level for us. And that is not being disparaging to any other boys, because any one of 5 or 6 players could have been the number one pick. But for our needs and for what we wanted, we were more than comfortable to pick Andy at number 1.
And like you said, he has a potential to really step into a leadership role. And you were able to take someone who had that potential at pick 1, but they're not that easy to find, aren't they? How hard is it to get someone with those leadership qualities? Oh,
it's hard, but the thing about pick 1, the cream comes to the top of every draft. Every player that goes in that top 5, 6, most of them have got those qualities that you look for. But the thing about Andy that also set him apart from a lot of other players was his ability to play to the scoreboard. And what I mean by that was Andy's got a trait in him that when the team is down, he has a very common trait in all his junior footy and even at AFL level, that he plays better when there's higher stakes. That's something that we thought was a really, really important trait for a young player to have. If the game's there to be won, the game's on the line, he always steps up to the plate.
And we saw that in his first game, round 1, 2017, the comeback game, 80-odd thousand, his first experience of anything like that. He comes out and gets 22 possessions, 82% efficiency. Did that make you smile? Was that like a bit of a proud dad moment for you?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And look, he could go back to the half-back flank, play in the back pocket, play on the most dangerous smalls and be an All-Australian small defender. But there's no doubt in my mind that he could be an All-Australian midfielder. He's got that adaptability. But, you'd like to have a couple of them, because I also think he'd be a great crumbing forward as well. But, yeah, he's just a special player and a special person.
Yeah, well, just on him as a person, I mean, I've had some dealings with him as well through the digital team, and he's been nothing but just very caring and professional. And I read a story when he was at Brighton Grammar that he just wanted to be involved in anything, and he was part of the choir, even though he was probably the worst singer there. Are these qualities like something that you admire in him?
Yeah, absolutely. But when you meet his parents, you can understand why he's had such a humble upbringing. Like, he might be the kid from Brighton Grammar, but he certainly is a young man that's got humility. He's a very caring young man. He's extremely loyal, and he's intelligent. And he's also got the added benefit of being a really good athlete. Like, he could have played a number of different sports, I've got no doubt, because he's got the aptitude to adapt to a lot of different situations. His brother has got elite soccer traits, young Noah, and I've got no doubt Noah could play AFL football one day. So that's just the family, and they're great people. The way they raise their children has been absolutely brilliant. And the benefit is that we get that in our football club for forever and ever and ever. And these are the sort of people that bind your club and create your culture going forward. And that's why it's important to pick people like Andy, because the club will be in good hands. One thing about Andy, that once his football career is finished, he's still going to be an Essendon person. I can see him being a board member one day, or he'll always be an Essendon person forever and a day. He'll have the legacy of a Terry Danaher, of a Simon Madden. That's just the person he is, the same as what Zach Merritt's got, the same as what Dyson Heppel's got. He's got those same inner traits that you want in your people, and that's pretty special.
It's a big compliment too. Were you a little bit surprised at the time, the reaction in Canada when he was taken at pick 1? Obviously, they're probably not that clued up on AFL over there, but there was an article or a few articles saying that he'd be the Bombers' saviour. Did that make you laugh?
There was a fair bit of commentary, but, anything Sheeds would have loved it. Just imagine if Sheeds was coach at the time. He would have milked it for every single thing possible. He would have been on a plane over there doing everything possible to whip up another marquee game in Canada. We're probably thinking of it as we speak. But, it's great. It's great, and hopefully that, we can, the club, and I know that Xavier's got plans to spread the wings of the club going forward once we get over this current issue that we've got in the world, that, there's plans to get the Essendon Football Club hopefully to the States playing games. You never know, they might just, on the way home, just stop by Canada and play a bit of an exhibition game there. You never know, the McGrath Cup.
Well, it sounds like a pretty good idea, and if the reaction from the US fans from the season opener is anything to go by, I think we could have a bit of a market on our hands there.
Yeah, and it wasn't that fantastic to see, and I hope Jake Stringer sent his jumper, an autograph signed jumper, over there, because we certainly got some great publicity last week.
Yeah, I've been told it's on the way, it's in transit, so hopefully Pat will get his Guernsey soon. I just wanted to ask you a little bit about this first draft you're involved in, the 98 rookie draft, and today we're speaking about the 2016 draft. How much has it changed since then, the landscape?
You can't compare. You can't compare the two. In my first draft at the club, as I said, I walked in the door and there was an empty office and there was no manual on how to be an AFL recruiter. It was, it was totally different. There was, you didn't have the information or the technology that we've got today. And if there's one thing that I'm really proud of, is that the person that takes over from me one day will have infrastructure, will have analytics systems set up, great support networks around them, processes, a list management strategy, a list management team, and the sophistication of what we do now compared to what we did back then is totally different. But that's also because of technology. It's also because of, the AFL's input into how they set up their recruiting hubs and the information that you get. But also in terms of resources, the resources that we have now compared to what we had back in 98 is just chalk and cheese. We've got full-time staff. When I first started, I was the recruiting and welfare manager. Now I'm the list manager, and Rob Forster Knight is the recruiting manager, ably assisted by, people like Noel Judkins, who's still one of our recruiters, and Tony Elshaw, and, Merv Kane up until last year, and a whole host of people like Bruce Evans in South Australia, and Ian White over in Western Australia, and others that I've probably missed as well. So we've got a huge team of people, and hopefully, and I really hope from the bottom of my heart that once we get over this current issue with the coronavirus, that the AFL as an industry gets back on deck, and all these people can come back to finishing the job off that we started together as a team, because it's certainly challenging times for everyone.
Yeah, challenging times indeed. But how are you approaching that at the moment, you and your team? Like, what can you do, and what sort of had to be put on hold?
A lot of things have had to be put on hold. Obviously, there's an uncertain future ahead. But having said that, I've got to still think of what's in the best interest of the club moving forward. So I can assure every Essendon supporter that we're not taking our eye off the future. We're certainly keeping in close dialogue with the AFL and awaiting for decisions to be made. I know that Xavier is leading our club magnificently at this point in time. He's done an unbelievable job, and I know that his leadership and the leadership of our board will ensure that we are going to see this through. We're going to come out bigger and stronger. And if there is changes to list sizes and to salary caps and to all these sort of things that we don't know at the present time, that we're going to work our absolute backsides off. We've been there before through the Asada issue, and we're going to come out even stronger this time, and because we have to, and we will.
Well, some reassuring words to leave the Bomber faithful with. Adrian, it's been a pleasure to chat to you over this series, and let's hope that we can catch up again in the near future as the next draft approaches.
Thanks, George. Done a great job yourself, mate.
Thanks, Adrian. Take care.